Welcome to this week's episode of Wide Angle. Joining us today, a very special guest, the Carnatic vocalist, Magsaysay Award winner, T.M.Krishna, whose voice is becoming increasingly louder on all issues that concern us, whether it's privacy, social inclusion, a uniform civil code. He's in the capital to receive the Indira Gandhi National Integration Award as well. T.M.Krishna, thanks very much for joining us on Wide Angle. Tell us about this award you're receiving today, how it came about, and which side of the political spectrum does it very clearly align you on?
Well, it's obvious where the question is coming from, and I think the perception will be similar to what I'm saying. But I don't belong to any political party. I don't belong to any party. I think for me, awards by themselves are kind of something you have to think about. I mean, what do they mean? What do they carry? And I think when this award was told to me, when I was called about it, I think what really caught my attention was the idea of national integration. And I do think that in the context that we live in today, that's one word that somehow disappeared from our discourse. You know, when I grew up, for example, national integration was always there. There was something on the television. You had these songs being done. The whole idea that irrespective of language, caste, religiosity, there was something.
Yeah,
for example, I think that's something very beautiful about that, and celebrating that. Somehow we don't talk in that texture today. And there's no doubt that today's dispensation is and its paraphernalia organizations are spreading exactly the opposite of saying we are different people. There is one stronger idea of India, and that's the idea that the rest should accept. Recently we heard somebody saying that India is for Hindus as Britain is for the British and Germany is for the Germans and things like that, right?
But are you concerned about the fact that in a polarized political climate, the award can be seen as politically aligned?
I mean, how it's going to be seen, it's going to be seen. I have no control over it, and I'm not going to comment about that. That's for people to see. But I have been in my columns, if people read me right, as critical of the Congress as I've been of the BJP or of the left. I have critiqued all of them.
One of the things that you've been in the news for, especially this week, has been a little music video that a group of you have released called Privacy Matters. It's sort of a welcome of the Supreme Court judgment on privacy. How did this come about? What was the motivation behind this music video?
I think the motivation is just the brilliant judgment. I think we complain a lot sometimes about the Supreme Court and how it functions. There are also some things, and sometimes we need to celebrate it. And I think that the privacy judgment is one beautiful judgment in terms of what it tells us about ourselves as citizens. Something, like I said before to somebody, we knew inside, but we were never given it in paper in such a beautiful form and saying that your body, your thought, your ideology, your sexuality, your choices are really yours. And the Constitution and democracy celebrates that. And which means it empowers you with all this and restricts the government from infringing upon all this. And that's what the verdict does. And a friend of mine called and said, this is such a beautiful, important verdict, constitutionally. Do you think we can do something artistically? And so I called my usual co-conspirator in all these things, Nityanan Jairam, who's an environmental activist, and I said, Shab, can we do something? So we started talking, and we said, okay, suppose we cull out from the judgment important ideas of dignity, of the limits of the state, of identity, of course, Aadhar being a very important component, a problematic component that also needs to be addressed and challenged. So we came up with the idea to be multilingual so it can reach more people. So we brought in Sheetal Sathe. Perumal Murugan has read a beautiful poem on the experience of having the security personnel in his house. And when he opened the diary that the security guy was keeping about him and his family. It's very revealing. So it came about like that. We got Usha Ramanathan to help us a lot with culling out important aspects of the judgment. So it had many people. Basha Singh wrote the lyrics. We had, so it was a beautiful exercise of many people, many minds coming together. And Archana Shekhar, a good dear friend of ours, kind of did the production part. So it was all done in different places, but the idea is celebrate the judgment. But very close to the idea is to ask very serious questions on Aadhar. and make those questions public. And it's also important that most people take these constitutional things to be something in English and understandable for the elite in cities. This has to go to everybody.
So when you say, yes, I mean, it's an artistic endeavor aimed to pose some very serious questions or ask some very serious questions about what's going on around us. Specifically in the context of Aadhaar, we hear many arguments back and forth about the significance of it, the ramifications of a unique ID number, you know, why it was conceived in the first place, what it hopes to achieve. And broadly speaking, you know, the question that critics often get is that what is your problem with giving up your biometrics? After all, every time, especially people like you and I who travel overseas or have passports, have our fingerprints on file, do biometric scans wherever we travel to in the world. I mean, these are questions that come at you.
This is it.
And if you look at the comparison with a social security network, then it's, for example, you know, the benefits that you might be getting from the state are linked to this particular number. And seemingly this seems logical. And yet there are problems. So I think, can you break it down? What are the
First, I think this comparison with social security is been such a lie, because anybody tells you how they get a social security number in America and why do you get it? You get there so that you can make money and you can work. For example, I got a social security number by giving a telephone number and address because I was going to make money in the United States of America. Full stop. It was not an identifier. It was not to say, to track me, it was not to find out what I was doing, and it was not my passport. It was not something that established me as an individual in that place. There's a huge difference from that being a function of social security. And you know that, if I remember right, I think there was a time when America was considering making it more expansive, and then it was stopped because of exactly the same issues of privacy, issues of individual fundamental rights of the individual, you know, the whole idea of the security of the individual, the big brother issues. Where is this information seeding? Secondly, when this information is taken from you, why is it taken from you? You have to ask that question. This information is taken from you, you're being told that this information is required for you to get rations, for you to get any benefit, for you to get a SIM card, for you to... So this is not just an information about you getting a benefit from
the government.
It's about the government knowing everything that you do. Now, this is not just about transactional. This is choice. This is thought. This is about where you are. This is about where you will be. It's about who you're meeting. The network that it will encompass is massive. Let's recognize that it's huge. And this is not about, you know, which government, BJP, Congress or whatever. It's just that you cannot give any government so much power. Now to the benefit question. This whole lie that if you have an Aadhar, suddenly corruption will disappear. This is the exact fraud that was put on us when demonetization happened. That you demonetize the currency and then fake currency will go, black money will go, everything. This is the same technique that has been thrown. You know it's not true. It's still an individual in the ration shop. Okay, I go to the ration shop. Say I have an Aadhar number. I don't have an Aadhar card. But say I do. I put my thumbprint there. It's all done. And the guy says, Shakar nahi hai. What will I do? I'm from below poverty line and probably lower caste in society. I don't get the sugar and I still go back home. Has the corruption ended? No, it hasn't ended. So we have to be very careful when we think that Aadhaar, by having this, all corrupt systems will be cleansed. No, you have to cleanse the corrupt system. Right? Okay, and first of all, like you said in the beginning, the idea was it was voluntary. If somebody wanted direct cash transfer into their account or benefit from the society, the government, then you could voluntarily opt to enter the Aadhaar system. Now, that has completely disappeared from this whole discussion we are having. Now they are talking about data. Now, think about data. Data is not just information, it's actually knowledge, and there's a huge difference between the two. You seed one number into every human activity, you know everything about that human being.
Correct.
This is as dangerous as it can get. And it invades upon my thinking. It invades on my ability not to be worried. Now say and also remember that all this can be altered any time. 5 years later, you may have a situation where you can change it in the parliament. You can make it more invasive. Then where does one go. More than this, we know enough cases of Aadhar fraud, we know cases of the problem with the fingerprinting data security issues,
Yeah.
and if you're not in the system, the shocking part is if you're not in the system, you don't exist.
In fact, that brings me to another issue which is linked to privacy. You gave a speech in September in Hyderabad, I think, where
Yeah.
you talked about what privacy means to you individually and as an artist. You're talking about allowing your mind to be free of fear that your life is being invaded in whatever way.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what you meant, because I think you've taken the definition of privacy not just to a dictionary definition and the way we understand it, but to a more psychological plane that I think we, don't even realize consciously about what privacy may or may not mean to us individually.
The human being functions in terms of ideation. Okay, it could be anything you do. It could be carpentry, it could be farming. You have a relationship with your environment, and in that relationship with the environment, you're constantly imagining, and that imagination comes to a creative space and you do something. Now this is the process of living that we all do, whether you write, whether it's journalism, whether it's anything that you do. Now the most important part of this whole happening is that this is a very private happening. If I am then told this does not belong to me, my sexual choice does not belong to me, or it can be monitored, or there are suspicions thrown on it, or the way I think, or the kind of people I meet, or the people I discuss with. If all this, I am told, is not something that I have complete freedom to, this is not secrecy. That's the other thing I want to just keep talking about. The word privacy, how you want to pronounce it, people think it's secrecy. No.
And therefore you have something
Exactly.
to hide.
People keep, even yesterday once we spoke about this Aadhar song, everybody said only people have something to hide have a problem with privacy. No. Privacy is not something to hide. Privacy is the ability to secure your dignity. And your dignity is in so many spheres. Your dignity is in functional sphere, it's in the emotional sphere, it's in the sphere of the body, and that is what you need. And from that comes respect, comes relationship, and we talk about equality in society. We talk about leveling the ground. How can you level the ground if you don't create an environment where everybody feels safe about themselves? So democracy is about looking at the beauty of society and people and then building governance from there. It is not to build governmental structures that are doing good things for people. No, it's the other way, which means for that people have to celebrate themselves.
One of the things that you had written, I can't remember, sometime in the last month, while defining this notion of privacy in the emotional sphere, you had taken Perumal Murugan's example of how he stopped writing after the issue with his book, because the fear of having his home and his thought and his mind invaded in the way that he had basically killed his creativity, or for all practical purposes.
I think that's a very important example, because when Perumal Murugan was hounded and he had practically no support from anybody, the Tamil Nadu government did nothing for him. He was asked to basically give up his spirit of being a writer and saying, I'm sorry, when all he had done is exercised his idea, is exercised his imagination. And it was a personal, when you write or when you sing or when you do anything, there is a personal interaction between you and the thing that is happening, and there is something very, when it's done with great honesty, there's something very precious about that. Okay, it's personal and it's impersonal, and that was taken away from it. So he gave up writing, and when or he declared himself dead as a writer. I think that was the most incredibly beautiful political statement anybody could have made, because it's a political statement, and I think that statement tells you what privacy means. It tells you that if you are told that you cannot be who you are and feel comfortable, secure, and celebrate that space, then you can't function in society. Then what you're doing in society is to make sure that you survive, that nobody thinks that you've done something wrong. So now if Aadhar happens and say all this is there, you're always worried that you may do something that may trigger some thought that somebody is thinking. Now suppose the government doesn't like how you write or how you think or how you function or who you meet, then I'm always going to be worried about it. I can't function freely. I cannot do what I do. And basically you break down the whole spirit of the Indian Constitution by doing this. And Murugan's case was a classic example of what it can do to the individual, you know, and not just a writer, he was a writer, but to any individual, that it can absolutely kill the idea of your presence. And how can we allow that to happen in a country like India? We just cannot allow that. And like I want to again stress, this is about every Indian. This is about all those, more about those in the margins, because they, I'll tell you what, you go to a person in the margin and says, you have to have an Aadhar to get this benefit. The person will get an Aadhar. What is that? That's fear.
Yeah, so it's interesting, the issues that you raise through your art and your creativity kind of all segue into each other, whether it is privacy, whether it is inclusion. The draft Uniform Civil Code that some of you went and presented to the Law Commission as well recently is also trying to bring all these issues together, right to dignity, right to privacy, right to inclusion, you know, equality of gender, equality of sexual preference, as the case may be. How was that received? Because, you know, that itself takes the debate on inclusion and on privacy to an entirely different level.
Absolutely. I think, you know, when the whole idea, a couple of friends said, can we, started working on this and said, can we do this? And I think there were two important elements to it. One is that there's this conversation on Uniform Civil Code that's been going around for some time now.
In the context of Kashmir and in the context of triple
talaq.
yeah.
I was going to say exactly that.
Yeah.
So in these two contexts, which means the intentions of this conversation is very clear. The intention has been, the texture has been about targeting the Muslim community, about, you know, almost presenting the idea that the Uniform Civil Code is something that has to set right the Muslim community. It is almost, that's the nature of the conversation that we are hearing around the country today, and somehow that everything is hunky-dory in most other personal laws, especially the Hindu personal laws. So therefore the ideal way is to somehow that be the platform to the conversation. We really felt that that's, of course, that's extremely disturbing. There's no question that that needs to be seriously challenged. And also, if we are talking about a Uniform Civil Code, we have to talk about a Uniform Civil Code that goes beyond every one of these religions. Whether it's the Hindu, Muslim, Parsi or anybody, the Uniform Civil Code must seriously look at people as citizens of this country. See, one of the problems in India is no citizen sees herself or himself as a citizen. They see themselves as Hindu, some caste, you know, gender, all that. Okay? So somehow that comes from the primary problem that we are always talking about ourselves about a 3,000-year-old civilization or 4,000. They may say 20,000, I don't know what they will say. So this whole idea that we are a modern, new country. Okay? We are a country of people who just came into being in 47, you know, and then had a constitution, has somehow not permeated in our head. This is my personal feeling. So if we talk about Uniform Civil Code, if we are talking about Uniform Civil Code, we should talk about one that treats every person as a citizen of this country. No gender, no sexuality, no caste, no religion, which means we have to propose something that is way, way, way forward looking and progressive.
So I think one of the things that people don't tend to realize when we talk about the Uniform Civil Code is that it would definitely also encompass some of the issues and the problem with the Hindu United family, the
In
Hindu
fact,
Marriage Act.
our draft
like
basically says we take out Hindu
HUF.
HUF. The draft says HUF is to go, has to definitely go, is what we have said. Yeah, because for example, all religious laws or personal laws will have a problem with homosexuality, with transgender. So adoption, as far as that goes, they'll all have problems with it.
Yeah.
But this has to be challenged, which means, you know, these all have to be brought into the way we look at personal laws, which is why the draft goes all the way in that. Okay, we are not saying this is the best draft, this is the ideal draft, nobody is saying that. But also we never had a document to work with. Till now everybody just talked about the Uniform Civil Code up in the air, you know, as an idea. So we thought if you put out an idea, then there is something to debate. We have to debate it, we have to discuss it, because there are different thoughts that come into, you know, in terms of adoption, there are different ideas. We have to talk about
at
it.
many levels. It's a clear challenge, because, you know, while there are hearings going on and there's petitions on 377 that are being heard.
377 will go, it has to go.
So your draft UCC refers to equal rights for people irrespective of sexual preference. We just saw the marital rape order from the Delhi High Court and the triple talaq order from the Supreme Court, which, you know, made triple talaq illegal, but the Sharia and the laws under which Muslim couples can divorce still is in place. So it didn't go into Muslim personal law. The marital rape judgment of the Delhi High Court didn't go into Hindu personal law.
Correct.
But these all exist within the ambit of these.
Which is why these personal, see, there's the other whole argument that may come, you know, do we need a uniform civil code? Can't we just look at all the personal laws and look at reforming them? Or I think that's, my personal feeling is that looks very impractical, because none of those structures are going to allow you to alter what they are, and they're going to fight you tooth and nail. So I feel that the way forward, I was a person who was not comfortable with the Uniform Civil Code for some time, because I was really worried that it's going to be Hindu Civil Code which becomes the Uniform Civil Code. But I think if you want to really go forward, you have to look at something that goes beyond. See, the court right now is kind of negotiating all these things, case by case.
Different personal laws.
They are just negotiating case by case. I really believe triple talaq was an opportunity that the Supreme Court let go. It had an opportunity to discuss, to actually say something far more inclusive in terms of what it meant, in terms of divorce, in terms of personal law. You know, I felt that they could have got to a point of saying that any personal law has to stand the test of the Constitution, and that one statement would have made things very interesting. You know, fundamental rights and Constitution then been very problematic on some of the practices that happen in the name of personal law, right? But nevertheless, that's why I feel the only way forward is to find, I think, UCC that transcends these things.
The Hadiya case, if we look at the Hadiya case, for example, how would that be dealt with differently if there was your UCC in place?
Our UCC also recognizes regular marriage. I mean, right, it's not like, it's not that thing, but the Hadiya case is very important. Fundamentally, Hadiya case is, she's an adult. You know, she's an adult who...
So privacy, dignity...
Everything. She's an individual. She has her thought, she has an idea, her sexuality, her choice of partner, her decision to live, all that is hers. And that's the right of the citizen. And the UCC gives the right to any citizen to marry anybody of any sexual preference and live with that person. So fundamentally, the person is, I mean, she has done everything that is, as a citizen of this country, is allowed to do and practice. There is no question of annulling anything. You know, there's no question of annulling anything. If you do that, you are actually taking away all the fundamental rights of a citizen of this country. So therefore, it's quite ridiculous that these things can even be challenged.
You know, one of the things that people will say in response to someone like you who's out there advocating for these issues is that, you know, this is the liberal, intellectual, entitled, privileged approach to what is good or not good for everyone. You hear a lot of that, whether it's true or not true. But this is something you say you've grappled with yourself. Your own privilege and your own entitlement has forced this reflection on you as well. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
I would never deny my privilege, the fact that I have privilege. I mean, not deny my privilege, but deny the fact that I have the privilege. I've born, class, caste, everything, you know. And this is, in fact, it's my realization of that, and of the fact that because of all this, actually I don't have the ability to really sense people, really understand problems, really see something from the perspective of the person who does not have all this. See, that's the grappling that is important, and I'm not saying that it's solved. That grappling is important for you to take yourself out of this this comfort and all these comforts. I mean, the word intellectual is very disturbing. Are you saying that a farmer is not intellectual? Are you saying a farmer does not have ideas? You know, this whole thing that, oh, the poor man doesn't care about all this. You're actually saying the poor man does not have an intellect. It's the people who are accusing us of being intellectuals who are actually denying most of this country intellectual abilities and intellectual thoughts and creativity, because they are saying in some way that you guys care about all this, but poor people and labor, no, they are far more intellectual than you and me. They have a greater sense of community. They have a greater sense of issues. They have a greater sense of what it means to stand in line for 4 hours to get ration. Secondly, I think it's in the grappling of this for myself personally that I speak. It's in the conversation that I have on the streets that feed me into thinking, into questioning who I am. So these questions don't come from actually me. They come from the people who actually are affected by this. I'm least affected actually by most of these things. You know, I can find my way through it because I have all the privilege, equipment to you know, support me.
Yeah.
But it's the people who don't have this. See, and just because people do not question, let's not think they don't think. They don't question because they're scared. So the whole idea, the problem with any societal structure is that it's built on creating fear as you go, you know, down its verticals, and therefore the people who are not speaking or appealing or opposing or, you know, dissenting or questioning are not people who are not feeling this or thinking this. These are people who are scared. So I think it is very important that every one of us partner with them.
Yeah.
We don't take their voice away, it's still their voice. We cannot appropriate the voice, but we need to partner with them. And therefore, if I'm going to be accused because of that to be a liberal intellectual, go ahead.
Or an entitled Brahmin, as the case may be.
I'm not denying that at all. I am an entitled Brahmin. But because I'm an entitled Brahmin, I must ask this question. Is exactly why I should ask this question. Because if an entitled Brahmin, upper class, English speaking, well educated, well travelled person does not ask this question, then what will people who don't have all this entitlement, what will they do? When their voice is heard, we need to work in tandem. We need to work together, conscious of the differences that are there.
So one final question, because through again your art, you're raising all these issues. The Urur Olcott festival is coming up again in December, something you created in Chennai, again to bring down caste barriers in your forms of music in the South. But do you think artists, musicians, actors, painters, whoever, do you think they do enough? Do you think their voices they need to be louder than they are when there are issues that challenge us, whether it is religious polarization, whether it is gender divides, whether it is economic disparities, caste disparities? Do you think the art world needs to speak up much more?
I mean, it's a no-brainer. Of course they do. But it's also a fact that in this country, the art world in general, we are all a bunch of very self-serving, self-obsessed people living in our own bubble. That's the reality. All artists are surrounded by people who say there's nobody better than them. This is a fact. But if art has to, let's talk about from front of art, you know, let's even forget the politics in the society. But from the idea of art, if beautiful art must happen, if great art experience must happen, it has to be grounded in the realness of everyday life.
Well, we had a situation with a Bollywood director last year issuing a public apology because he had a Pakistani actor in his movie.
I think that was gross. They'll tell you it's economics, they'll tell you I've plowed in so much money into it. But considering the range of money that we're discussing here, that's a little, you know, that's not an excuse that I will accept. But yeah, that's proof that we are not, the fact is that they don't have the courage to really stand up to issues. There are exceptions, I'm not saying there aren't, but in general, we're just so scared. Artists are insecure. So they're so scared that they will lose their market, they will
And
lose their
narcissistic a little bit?
Little bit? What about the rest? I said completely self-obsessed.
Yeah.
And so if you're self-obsessed, you're always protecting yourself. You know, for an artist, it all functions in that way. But I'm saying if you want to create great art, you have to be real, you have to be with people, you have to walk. See, you cannot create great art unless you are responding and unless your emotions and your thoughts are being fed by what is happening around. And if you're not going to allow that to happen, then I'm sorry, but your art is also a fraud, in my opinion. It may be pleasurable, but in my book it's still a fraud.
Okay, and finally, you know, as I said, you're here to receive an award. You said you put a lot of thought into whether you want to accept it as well in the beginning. The idea is what you're standing for. The challenges for you going forward, because clearly you're embarking on a much more activist sort of role now with your video, with the UCC, all these things. What next?
I don't know actually. I mean, how I see it is, all this comes from the fact that I sing. I mean, that's where I'm centered. I'm centered in the fact that I sing, and so I'll keep singing. And I think all this comes from what I believe you can do, what I believe we all can do in society. And I will continue raising these questions, getting involved with wonderful people from across the spectrum of society. And I think I'm learning from every one of this. You know, another beautiful thing about engaging with these ideas is, look, I'm just a normal citizen, okay? I am not a lawyer, I don't have some constitutional expertise, I've not spent 30 years on the field like many activists have, so I'm not any of that. So therefore, this process is also learning for me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm also learning so much about these ideas. I'm going to make mistakes, I'm going to say the wrong things, I'm going to do the wrong things. But by learning, I think that there is, for me it's seamless, you know. I somehow don't see a break between me being on stage and singing.
And playing the role.
Yeah, and then me being on a video that challenges Aadhar, or you know, being part of a group of people who are present UCC. So I feel somehow it's about trying to do, shall we say, sensitive things in society. All this is about that, right? That's all.
Please sing us some of, as I said, since you said music is what centers you, the privacy song is this week's video.
Done.
Sing us a little bit.
मेरी पहचान क्या, मेरी जात क्या, मेरी काम क्या, मेरी दोस्ती किससे, मेरा खान पान क्या, मैं सोचूं क्या, इन पर अब नहीं घुसेगी तुम्हारी नाक, सुन लो बरखुरदार, सुन लो बरखुरदार, सुन लो बरखुरदार, निजता की हमारी मांग पर अदालत ने की हमारी जयकार, आधार को अब हम करेंगे निराधार, आधार को अब हम करेंगे निराधार, आधार को अब हम करेंगे निराधार.